The ship moved through the darkness of space like a small light against an ocean of black. It was called the UES Olive Branch, and it carried the hopes of 8 billion people on a tiny blue planet called Earth. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood near the main window of the ship. She watched the stars pass by and thought about everything that had brought her here. 40 years ago, humanity had discovered they were not alone in the universe. They had found signals, patterns, and finally proof that other beings lived among the stars. It had taken decades to build ships fast enough to reach them. Now Elena was about to speak for all of humanity. She was 53 years old with gray streaks in her black hair. Her eyes were dark brown and carried the weight of responsibility. Behind her stood her team of 12 diplomats, scientists, and guards. They had trained for years for this moment. They had studied the customs of species they had never met. They were ready. Ambassador, said Captain Rodriguez from the doorway, we are approaching Nexus Station. The Council has granted us permission to dock. Elena nodded and took a deep breath. Then let us make history. Nexus Station was the largest structure humanity had ever seen. It was a massive ring that floated in space, big enough to hold 100 cities. Lights covered every surface. Ships of all shapes and sizes moved around it like insects around a hive. This was the center of galactic civilization. This was where the 12 elder species ruled over 1,000 worlds. The olive branch was tiny compared to the other ships. It moved slowly toward the docking port that had been assigned to them. Elena could see alien faces watching from windows as they passed. Some looked curious, others looked disgusted. When the ship finally docked, Elena gathered her team in the main hall. She looked at each of them and smiled. Remember why we are here, she said. We come in peace. We come with open hands. Whatever happens in there, we represent the best of humanity. Be proud, be calm, be hopeful. Her brother David was among the team. He was a captain in the Earth Defense Force, assigned to protect the delegation. He was younger than Elena by 5 years, with the same dark eyes but a soldier's hard face. And if they are not peaceful? David asked quietly. Elena put her hand on his shoulder. Then we smile and try again. Peace is not built in a day, little brother. The doors opened and they stepped onto Nexus Station. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers mixed together. The gravity was slightly different, making each step feel lighter. Alien beings of all kinds walked past them. Some had scales, some had feathers, some had no faces at all. They all stopped to stare at the humans. A tall creature with blue skin and forearms approached them. It wore silver robes and carried a staff that glowed with soft light. I am Counselor Varick of the Mediation Corps, it said in perfect English. I will take you to the council chamber. Please follow me and do not speak to anyone along the way. Elena bowed her head slightly. Thank you, Counselor. We are honored. They walked through long hallways filled with wonders. Elena saw gardens that grew without soil, machines that seemed to think for themselves, and art that moved like living things. Everything spoke of civilizations that had existed for millions of years. Humanity was young compared to them, so very young. The council chamber was at the heart of the station. It was a circular room with walls that seemed to be made of pure light. In the center was a platform where Elena would stand. Around her, rising up like mountains, were 12 massive Thrones, each throne held a member of the Galactic Council. Elena recognized them from her studies, the crystalline Vaughn, the insect-like Cathmary, the giants of the Dravasi Empire, the shadow beings of the Null Collective. Each species had ruled their corner of the galaxy for longer than humanity had existed. At the highest throne sat High Arbiter Zethal of the Vaughn Dominion. His body was made of living crystal that glowed with inner fire. He was ancient, beyond measure, and powerful beyond imagination. His word was law in this chamber. Elena walked to the center platform. Her team stayed at the edge of the room, watched by guards with weapons. She did not recognize she was alone, now standing before the rulers of the stars. You may speak, human, Zethal said. His voice was like breaking glass, sharp and cold. High Arbiter honored members of the Galactic Council, I am Elena Vasquez. I speak for the people of Earth. We have traveled far to stand before you today, and we are grateful for this audience. She paused and looked around at the 12 faces watching her. Some showed interest, most showed nothing at all. Humanity is young, she continued. We have made many mistakes. We have fought wars among ourselves. We have damaged our own world. These things are true, and we do not hide from them. But we have also created beauty. We have written music that makes souls weep. We have painted pictures that capture the light of our sun. We have loved each other across every difference that tried to divide us. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. We come to you not as conquerors or beggars. We come as neighbors. We wish to trade with you, to learn from you, to share what we have learned. We wish to stand beside you against the darkness that waits at the edge of all things. We ask only for a chance to prove ourselves. She bowed again and waited. The council members looked at each other. Some whispered in languages Elena did not know. The silence stretched on for minutes that felt like hours. Finally Zethal raised one crystalline hand. The whispers stopped. We have watched your species for some time, he said. We have seen your wars. We have seen your weapons. We have seen how you treat each other. His voice dripped with contempt. You are violent. You are primitive. You are a danger to yourselves and everyone around you. Elena kept her face calm. We acknowledge our past, High Arbiter, but we have grown. We have united as one people. We have left our conflicts behind us. Have you? Zethal's crystal body flashed with angry light. Your history shows a pattern that cannot be broken. Every generation of humans finds new reasons to kill each other. You cannot be trusted with the power of the stars. One of the other council members spoke. It was a Cathmary, its insect face impossible to read. Perhaps we should give them time. They are young. They may yet learn. No, Zethal said firmly. We have seen this pattern before with other species. Violence is in their nature. It cannot be removed. He looked down at Elena with eyes like frozen fire. Your petition is denied. You will return to your world and remain there. You will not expand beyond your system. This is the judgment of the council. Elena felt her heart sink, but she kept her voice steady. High Arbiter, please. We ask only for a chance. Let us prove ourselves through our actions. Zethal stood from his throne. He was massive, 3 times the height of a human, and his body blazed with terrible light. You do not understand, he said. This is not a debate. This is not a negotiation. Your presence here is an insult to every civilized species in the Galaxy, you should be grateful that we allow you to leave it all. We mean no insult, Alina said. We only want peace. Peace, Zethal laughed, and the sound was like shattering crystal. Your kind does not understand peace, you only understand fear and death. He raised his hand and suddenly guards surrounded the human delegation. Perhaps a lesson is needed. Perhaps the galaxy should see what happens to primitives who reach beyond their place. Alina saw her brother David reach for his weapon, but she shook her head. Sharply, he stopped, his face filled with anger and fear. What are you doing? Alina asked, fighting to keep her voice calm. We are sending a message, Zethal said. A message to every young species that might dream of the stars. A message written in blood. The guards raised their weapons. They were not the station guards from before. They were born executioners, their crystalline bodies designed for killing. Alina looked at her team. She looked at her brother. She saw the fear in their eyes, but also the courage. They stood tall even now. I forgive you, Alina said. To Zal, humanity will forgive you. We are better than this moment. Remember that. Zethal made a gesture. The weapons fired. Alina Vasquez died standing, her eyes open, facing her killer without fear. Beside her fell her team, her friends, her brother, 12 humans who had come in peace, 12 humans who had offered only friendship. Their bodies were thrown into space as the olive branch was destroyed behind them. The entire execution was broadcast to every world. In the Council's domain, 1 trillion beings watched humanity's first ambassadors die on Earth. The broadcast was received in complete silence. People gathered in streets, in homes, in churches and temples. They watched their best and bravest murdered in cold blood. They heard Zethal's final words echo across the stars. Let this be a warning to all primitives. The stars belong to the civilized. Reach for them and you will burn. The transmission ended. For a long moment, Earth was silent. 8 billion people held their breath, frozen by grief and shock. Then slowly something changed. The grief did not disappear, but it transformed into something else. Something cold, something ancient. Something that had lived in humanity's heart since the first human picked up a stone and refused to be prey. In government buildings and military bases, in quiet homes and crowded cities, humans looked at each other with a new understanding in their eyes. They had come in peace. They had offered friendship. They had been answered with murder and contempt. Very well, if the galaxy wanted to see what humanity was capable of, humanity would show them. They would show them exactly what happened when you killed the children of Earth. The universe had just made its greatest mistake. General Marcus Stone had watched the footage 47 times. Each time he hoped the ending would be different. Each time he watched Alina Vasquez die with dignity while her killers laughed. Each time he watched Captain David Chen fall beside his sister, reaching for her hand in his final moment. The war room of United Earth Defense Command was silent except for the hum of machines. Screens covered every wall, showing news feeds from around the world. Everywhere the same scenes played out. Candles in windows, flowers in streets, flags at half-staff. 8 billion people mourning together. Stone was 61 years old. He had fought in 3 wars before humanity found peace. He had buried friends and enemies alike. He had seen the worst that humans could do to each other, but nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing had prepared him for watching his people murdered while the galaxy cheered. President Amara Ayanquil walked in, followed by the leaders of every major nation on Earth. They moved like people, carrying heavy weights. Their faces showed the same grief that Stone felt in his chest. President Ayanquil was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She had led Earth through its final wars and into unity. She had dreamed of taking humanity to the stars in peace. Now that dream was ashes. Report, she said quietly. Stone turned to face her. Madame President, we have confirmed the deaths of all 13 members of the diplomatic team. The olive branch has been completely destroyed. Our monitoring stations detected its final signals approximately 6 hours ago, and the Council, they have broadcast the execution 17 times in the past 12 hours. They are calling it a lesson for primitive species. They are celebrating. Others stared at nothing with empty eyes. A few had their fists clenched so tight that their knuckles were white. What are our options? President Akono asked. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stepped forward. She was the commander of Earth's space fleet, such as it was, 20 ships capable of faster than light travel, a handful of weapons that seemed like toys compared to what the Council possessed. Militarily, we cannot win a direct conflict, Tanaka said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with anger. The Vaughn Dominion alone has over 10,000 warships. The entire Council commands resources we cannot even count. If we attack them conventionally, we will be destroyed within weeks. So we do nothing? Asked Premier Chen of the Asian Federation. His voice cracked as he spoke. David Chen had been his nephew. We let them murder our people and simply accept it. I did not say that, Tanaka replied. All eyes turned to him. There is another option, he said slowly, an option we hoped we would never need to discuss. President Akinquo looked at him with sharp eyes. Explain. Stone walked to a control panel and entered a code that only 3 people on Earth knew. The main screen changed, showing blueprints and technical data that most of the people in the room had never seen. 32 years ago, when we first developed faster than light travel, our scientists made a discovery. They found a way to destabilize stars. Stone paused, letting the words sink in. Not just damage them, destroy them completely, turn them into supernovas that would wipe out everything in their systems. The room went very quiet. We called the technology the Prometheus array. Stone continued. 3 of them were built in secret and hidden in the outer solar system. They were meant to be our final defense against extinction, a weapon so terrible that no enemy would dare threaten Earth. Once they knew it existed. You built weapons that can kill stars? Asked Chancellor Weber of the European Union. Her face was pale. Yes, and before today, I prayed we would never use them. President Akinquo stared at the blueprints on the screen. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands trembled slightly. What would happen if we used this weapon against the Vaughn? Stone took a deep breath. Their home star would collapse and then explode. Every planet in their system would be destroyed. Billions would die. Billions of innocents, said Cardinal Martinez, the representative of Earth's religious communities. Billions who had nothing to do with the Council's decision. Yes. Stone admitted this is not a weapon of justice. It is a weapon of terror. It exists to show our enemies that the cost of attacking Earth is too high to pay. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some argued that using such a weapon would make humanity no better than the Council. Others said that humanity would be destroyed if they did not respond with overwhelming force. Some wept, some shouted, some sat in silence, unable to speak. President Okonkwo listened to all of them. She did not interrupt. She did not argue. She simply listened, her face like stone. Finally, when everyone had spoken, she stood. I have heard your words, she said. I have felt your pain. I share it. Elena Vasquez was my friend. I chose her for this mission because I believe she represented the best of us. Her voice broke slightly, then steadied, and they killed her like an animal. They killed all of them and laughed while they did it. She looked around the room. We came to them in peace. We offered them friendship. We asked only for a chance to prove ourselves, and they answered us with murder and contempt. They promised us extinction. They said we do not deserve to exist. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. I do not want to use this weapon. The thought of killing billions of innocents makes me sick, but I think of my children. I think of your children. I think of every human being on this planet. The Council has told the galaxy that we are prey, that we can be killed without consequence if we do not answer them, if we do not show them what humanity is capable of. They will come for us, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but they will come, and our children will die screaming while the galaxy cheers. She turned back to face the room. I will carry this burden. I will live with this guilt. I will answer to history and to God for what I am about to do, but I will not let humanity go quietly into extinction. I will not let Elena's death mean nothing. The vote was taken. It was not unanimous. Nothing so terrible could ever be unanimous, but it was enough. The Annihilation Protocol was authorized. 3 days later, something strange happened. Every human transmission in the galaxy went silent. Ships stopped broadcasting. Communication stations went dark. Earth itself seemed to disappear from the universe. At Nexus Station, the Council noticed the silence. Counselor Varric brought it to the attention of the high orbiters. Replacement, a young Vaughn named Keith, who had been chosen to complete Zethal's term. The humans have stopped transmitting, Varric said. All of their signals have ceased. Keith made a dismissive gesture. They have finally learned their place. They are cowering in fear as they should. The lesson has been taught. Should we not investigate? Their silence seems strange. Why waste resources on primitives? They are no threat to us. Let them hide in their little corner of the galaxy. They will be forgotten soon enough. Varric bowed and left, but something bothered him. He had studied humans more than most. He had read their history, their literature, their military strategies. He knew that humans did not surrender easily. He knew that their silence often came before their most terrible actions. But he said nothing more. The Council did not want to hear his concerns. They were too busy celebrating their victory over the primitive species that had dared to ask for peace on Earth. The preparations continued in secret. The crew of the UES Prometheus was selected from thousands of volunteers. Every person on the ship knew they were unlikely to return. Every person accepted this without hesitation. Captain David Chen was the last to board the ship. He was not the David Chen who had died at Nexus Station. This David was named after him. His nephew, a young Officer who had just turned 30, he carried a photograph of his uncle and his Aunt Alina in his pocket. He looked at it one last time before the ship launched. I will finish what you started, he whispered. I will show them the price of killing our family. The Prometheus left Earth incomplete. Darkness without a single transmission. It carried 12 crew members and a weapon that could kill stars. It moved through space like a ghost, invisible and silent. Humanity had tried peace. Humanity had offered friendship. The galaxy had answered with blood. Now, humanity would answer in kind. The darkness between stars had never felt so cold, but somewhere in that darkness, a small ship carried the fire that would light the galaxy ablaze, a fire born of grief and rage and love, a fire that would teach the elder species a lesson they would never forget. Do not kill the children of Earth. The price is too high to pay. President Okonkwo stood alone in her office on the night the Prometheus launched. She held a glass of whiskey in her hand but did not drink. She stared at the stars and thought about the billions who would soon die because of her order. Forgive me, she whispered to no one. Forgive me for what I am about to do, and forgive them because they do not know what they have awakened. The stars gave no answer. They simply burned in the darkness, not knowing that one of their own was about to die. In 6 days, the universe would change forever. In 6 days, the galaxy would learn why humans were the most dangerous species ever to reach for the stars. In 6 days, the Vaughn would burn. The Vaughn home system was beautiful in a cold and perfect way. Its yellow star burned at the center like a jewel made of fire. 5 planets circled around it in precise orbits. The third planet, Zetha Prime, was the heart of the Vaughn Dominion. 4 billion crystalline beings lived there, their cities rising like frozen forests toward the sky. High Arbiter Zethal had returned home to celebrate his final victory. He had ruled the council for 300 years, and the execution of the human ambassadors would be remembered as his greatest moment. His people lined the streets to honor him. They sang songs of his wisdom. They praised his strength in dealing with the primitive threat. Zethal stood on the balcony of his palace and looked out at his people. His crystal body caught the sunlight and scattered it into 1,000 colors. He felt pride. He felt satisfaction. He felt like a god. He did not feel fear. He had no reason to feel fear. Humans were nothing. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. They would hide on their little world and eventually die out as all primitive species did. The galaxy would forget they ever existed. Far away at the edge of the system, a small ship dropped out of faster than light travel. It was called the UES Prometheus. It was painted black and gave off no signals to any sensors that might detect it. It looked like a small asteroid drifting through space. Captain David Chen sat in the command chair and looked at the yellow star in the distance. He thought about his aunt Elena. He thought about his uncle David, who he had been named after. He thought about the way they had died, standing tall and unafraid while their killers laughed. We have arrived, said Lieutenant Sarah Acapper, the ship's pilot. Her hands were steady on the controls, but her voice was tight with emotion. I see it, Chen said quietly. That is the heart of the species that murdered our ambassadors. Around him sat the rest of his crew, 12 people in total, engineers, scientists, soldiers, a poet named James Wright, who had insisted on coming to record humanity's greatest and most terrible moment, a priest named Father Antonio, who had come to pray for the souls they were about to take. All of them had volunteered, knowing they would probably not survive. Begin preparations, Shen ordered. The crew moved quickly and quietly. The Prometheus array was a massive weapon that filled most of the ship. It had never been tested on an actual star. The scientists were 97% sure it would work as designed. That 3% uncertainty hung over them like a shadow. Captain, said Dr. Maria Santos, the chief scientist, the weapon is ready. We need your authorization. Code to arm it. Chen nodded and pulled a small card from his pocket. On it was a string of numbers that only he knew. He entered them into the console with steady fingers. Authorization accepted. The computer said, Prometheus array is now armed. Please confirm target. Chen looked at the main screen. The yellow star burned peacefully, unaware of what was about to happen. Around it, billions of Vaughn lived their lives. They worked and played and loved and dreamed. They were not all evil. Many of them had probably never even heard of Earth. Children were being born right now who had done nothing wrong. Captain, Lieutenant Akafer said softly, are you all right? Chen closed his eyes for a moment. He saw his aunt's face in his mind. He heard Zethal's words echoing across the stars. Your kind does not deserve a chance. You deserve extinction. He opened his eyes. Target confirmed. The star designated Vaughn Prime. Prepare a fire, Captain. Father Antonio spoke from his station. May I say a few words first? Chen nodded. The priest stood and faced the crew. His face was old and lined with the weight of what they were about to do. Lord, we do not come to you with clean hands. Today, we come carrying the fire of judgment. We do not pretend that what we are about to do is good. It is terrible. It is awful beyond measure, but we believe it is necessary. We ask not for your blessing, but for your forgiveness. For the souls we are about to take, for our own souls which will carry this burden forever. In your mercy, remember that we did not want this war. They brought it to us, and now we must answer. He made the sign of the cross and sat down. Silence filled the ship. James Wright, the poet, was writing in a small notebook. His pen moved quickly, trying to capture words that might somehow make sense of this moment. Ready to fire, Dr. Santos said. Chen took a deep breath. For Earth, for Elena, for everyone they will never have the chance to kill. Fire. The ship shook as the Prometheus array released its power. A beam of energy shot toward the distant star, invisible to the eye but terrible in its effect. It would take the beam several hours to reach its target. When it did, it would penetrate deep into the star's core and begin a chain reaction that could not be stopped. Weapon has been deployed, Dr. Santos reported. Impact in approximately 4 hours. The reaction will take another 30 to 40 hours to complete. Total time until stellar collapse 47 hours. Chen nodded. Slowly set course back to Earth. Maximum speed, Sir. Lieutenant Akafer said hesitantly. Our engines were damaged during the firing sequence. We may not be able to achieve maximum speed. Do what you can. Get us as far away as possible. The Prometheus turned and began its slow journey home. Behind them, the yellow star continued to burn, not knowing it was already dead. On Setha Prime, the first signs of trouble, appeared 31 hours later. Scientists noticed unusual readings from their sun. Small fluctuations in energy output. Tiny changes in the light spectrum. At first, they thought their instruments were broken, then the readings got worse. High orbiter Zethal was woken in the middle of the night by his chief scientist, a nervous Vaughn named Pra. High orbiter, something is wrong with the sun, we do not understand it. The core appears to be destabilizing. Zethal rose from his sleep chamber, his crystal body dim with confusion. Destabilizing. That is impossible. Stars do not simply destabilize. I know, High Arbiter, but the readings are clear. If this continues, the star will collapse within 20 hours. For the first time in centuries, Zethal felt cold fear. Evacuate everyone now. The order went out immediately, but it was far too late. Zethal Prime had 4 billion inhabitants. The Vorn Dominion had ships, but not nearly enough to move 4 billion people in 20 hours. Perhaps they could save 1 million, perhaps 2 million. If they were lucky, the rest would burn. Panic spread through the cities of Zethal Prime. People ran through the streets, trying to reach the spaceports. Ships took off filled with as many passengers as they could hold. Parents pushed their children through crowds, desperate to get them to safety. The old and the weak were left behind. Zethal stood in his palace and watched his world fall apart. He had ruled for 300 years. He had conquered enemies and expanded his people's territory. He had believed himself powerful. Now he understood how wrong he had been. How is this possible? Prola appeared on his screen, his crystal face filled with terror. High Arbiter, we have analyzed the data. This is not natural. Someone did this to our star. Someone introduced an instability into its core. Who has such power? Before Prola could answer, a new signal appeared on all frequencies. It was coming from outside the system, from a small ship that was running toward empty space. Captain David Chen's face appeared on every screen in the Vaughn system. People of the Vaughn Dominion, he said. His voice was calm and cold. You are receiving this message because your star is dying. In approximately 16 hours, it will explode and destroy everything in this system. This is not an accident. This is not a natural disaster. This is humanity's answer to your council's actions. Across Zethal Prime, billions of Vorns stopped and stared at the human face on their screens. 18 days ago, your High Arbiter murdered our ambassadors in cold blood. They came in peace. They offered friendship. They asked only for a chance to prove themselves. Your Arbiter killed them and called it a lesson. Chen leaned forward, his dark eyes burning with grief and rage. This is our lesson. We did not want this war. We begged for peace, but you chose to teach us that the galaxy belongs to the strong. Very well, we have learned, and now we are teaching you. He held up a photograph. It showed Elena Vasquez and the original David Chen standing together, smiling before their final mission. These are the people you killed, my aunt, my uncle. They were good people. They believed in peace. They believed in the best of both our species. You murdered them for being hopeful. His voice hardened. We came in peace. You chose war. This is what war with humanity looks like. Remember this day. Remember this star. And remember that we have 2 more weapons just like this one. If anyone attacks Earth again, their star will be next. The transmission ended. Zethal stared at the blank screen for a long moment, then he began to laugh. It was not a happy sound, it was the laugh of someone who had just realized that everything they believed was wrong. Primitives, he whispered, we called them primitives, and they built a weapon that can kill stars. He looked out the window at his sun, which was already beginning to change color as the instability grew. What have we awakened? 16 hours later, the star collapsed. It pulled in on itself for one terrible moment, then exploded outward in a wave of fire and death. Zethal Prime was vaporized in seconds, so were the other 4 planets, so were the thousands of ships that had not escaped in time. When it was over, nothing remained but dust and radiation and the ghost of a civilization that had believed itself immortal. Across the galaxy, 1 trillion beings watched in horror. The Galactic Council received the news and fell into chaos. Some demanded immediate retaliation against Earth. Others pointed out that the humans clearly had more weapons and would use them. No one knew what to do. No one had ever seen anything like this in all the millions of years of galactic civilization. No species had ever killed a star until now. On the Prometheus, the crew saw the distant flash of the explosion through their rear sensors. No one spoke, no one celebrated. They simply stared at the light of a dying star and wondered what they had become. James Wright put down his pen. His notebook was full of words that would never make sense of this moment. There were no words for what they had done. There was only silence and grief and the terrible knowledge that they had changed the universe forever. Father Antonio prayed quietly in his corner. He prayed for the dead. He prayed for the living. He prayed for humanity's soul. Captain Chen sat in his command chair and stared at nothing. He had avenged his family. He had protected his planet. He had killed billions of people who had done nothing wrong. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a monster. But he was a monster who had saved his people, and in the end, that was all that mattered. Behind them, a star died. Ahead of them, home waited, and somewhere in the darkness between, the future hung in the balance, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The Galactic Council had stood for 6 million years. It had survived wars, plagues, and disasters that had wiped out entire civilizations. It had never known true fear. Its members were the elder species, the rulers of the stars, the powers that shaped the destiny of 1,000 worlds. Now, for the first time in its ancient history, the Council was afraid. The 11 remaining members gathered at Nexus Station in an emergency session. The 12th throne, the one that had belonged to the Vaughn High Orbiter, sat empty. Its crystal surface was dark and cold, a reminder of what had been lost. New Orbiter Keith, who had inherited his position when Zethal died in the explosion, stood before the Council. He was young by Vaughn standards, barely 300 years old. His crystal body flickered with nervous light as he faced the most powerful beings in the galaxy. We have confirmed the destruction of Zethal Prime, he said, his voice shaking. Over 4 billion of my people are dead. Our home world is gone. Our sun has become a tomb of radiation and debris. The other council members shifted in their thrones. Some showed sympathy. Others showed nothing at all. How did this happen? Demanded Lord Vexor of the Dravosi Empire. He was a massive creature covered in armored scales with eyes that burned Like hot coals, how did a primitive species destroy a star? Our scientists said such technology was impossible. Your scientists were wrong, said the Cathmarie representative, her insect voice clicking with each word. Humans have done what we believed could not be done. They have changed the rules of war forever. Then we must destroy them. Vexor growled. We must send our fleets to their world and burn it to ash. We must end this threat before it grows. And then what? Asked Counselor Varric, who had been allowed to speak at this session. Their message said they have 2 more of these weapons. If we attack, they will use them. How many more stars are you willing to lose? The council fell into argument. Some demanded war, others demanded negotiation. The null collective beings of shadow and darkness said nothing at all. They simply watched with their empty eyes and waited. Far across the galaxy, the second human ship arrived at its destination, the UES. Judgment dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the Devassi system. It did not fire. It did not broadcast any messages. It simply waited, a silent threat hanging in the darkness. Admiral Yuki Tanaka sat in the command chair of the Judgment. She was 52 years old with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had fought in Earth's last wars before Unity. She had hoped to spend her final years in peace. Instead, she was commanding humanity's second most terrible weapon. Status report, she said calmly. All systems operational, Admiral, replied her first officer, Commander Eric Johansson. The Prometheus array is armed and ready. The Dravosi have detected our presence. Their fleet is mobilizing. Tanaka nodded. Open a channel to their command. The main screen flickered and showed the face of a Dravosi admiral. His scales were deep red, a sign of high rank, and his eyes burned with fury. Human vessel, you have entered Dravosi space without permission. This is an act of war. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Tanaka remained calm. Admiral, I am here with a simple message. If your fleet moves against Earth, your star will suffer the same fate as the Vaughn Sun. If you remain in your system, we will take no action against you. The choice is yours. The Dravosi admiral snarled. You dare threaten the Dravosi Empire? We have conquered 100 worlds. We have crushed species greater than yours. You are nothing but insects waiting to be stepped on. The Vorn said the same thing. Tanaka replied. Now 4 billion of them are dead. Think carefully about your next words, Admiral. They may be the most important words you ever speak. The screen went dark as the Dravosi cut the connection. Tanaka watched the sensor display as the enemy fleet gathered, hundreds of ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything Earth had ever built. They could destroy the Judgment in minutes if they chose to attack, but they did not choose to attack. Hours passed. The Dravosi fleet remained at the edge of their system, watching the small human ship. They did not advance. They did not retreat. They simply waited, caught between pride and fear. On Earth, the news of the Vorn destruction had spread across the world. People reacted in different ways. Some celebrated, waving flags and singing songs of victory. Others wept, horrified by what their species had done. Many simply sat in silence, unable to understand the enormity of what had happened. President Okonkwo addressed the United Nations in a speech that would be remembered for centuries. Today, humanity has shown the galaxy a Face it has never seen before, she said, her voice heavy with emotion. We have proven that we will not go quietly into extinction. We have shown that the price of attacking Earth is too high for any species to pay. She paused and looked directly into the cameras. But let me be clear, we did not want this. We came to the stars hoping for friendship. We offered peace to beings who saw us as nothing but animals to be slaughtered. They killed our ambassadors and promised us death. We responded in the only way that would guarantee our survival. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I do not expect the galaxy to forgive us. I do not expect history to call us heroes. What we have done is terrible beyond measure. Billions of innocent beings are dead because of our weapons. That weight will hang over humanity forever. She straightened her shoulders. But we are still here. Our children will still live. Our civilization will continue, and that is what matters most. A leader must make impossible choices. I made mine. I will live with the consequences, and I will die knowing that humanity survives. The speech divided public opinion. Some called Okonkwo a savior, others called her a monster. Protests erupted in cities around the world. People demanded answers, justice, peace, but there were no easy answers, and peace seemed very far away. The third human ship, the UES Vengeance, took position near Nexus Station itself. Captain Sarah Kim commanded this vessel. She was the youngest of the three captains, only 35 years old, but she had been chosen for her calm under pressure and her unwavering loyalty to Earth. The Council watched in horror as the human ship appeared on their sensors. They were no longer safe, even in their sacred seat of power. The primitives had brought their terrible weapons to the very heart of galactic civilization. What do they want? Demanded Lord Vexer, his voice less confident than before. Perhaps we should ask them, said the Cathmarie representative. Before anyone could respond, a new transmission appeared on the Council's screens. It showed Captain Kim's face, young and determined. Members of the Galactic Council, she said, I bring a message from Earth. You have 3 days to accept our terms. If you refuse, Nexus Station and every ship in this system will be destroyed. If you attempt to evacuate, we will consider it a hostile act and respond accordingly. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning. The screen went dark. For a long moment, no one in the council chamber spoke. Then slowly the KTH Mary representative stood. We were wrong, she said quietly. We looked at the humans and saw primitives. We saw a species that fought among itself, that lived brief and violent lives, that seemed incapable of the wisdom we had gathered over millions of years. We did not see them clearly. She turned to face the other council members. They are not primitives, they are survivors. Their planet is harsh and dangerous. Their history is filled with conflict because they had to fight for everything they ever had. They learned lessons that we forgot long ago. They learned that survival sometimes requires terrible choices. They learned that mercy to the merciless is suicide. Lord Vexer growled. Are you saying we should surrender to these animals? The Cathmarie replied, I am saying we should stop calling them animals, because animals do not build weapons that kill stars. Animals do not cross the galaxy to avenge their dead. Animals do not stare into the face of extinction and refuse to flinch. She sat down. Humans are something we have never encountered before. They are a species forged in fire, tempered by struggle and driven by a will to survive that borders on insanity. We poked them with a stick. They responded by burning down our house. Perhaps we should stop poking them. The debate continued for 2 days. Arguments raged back and forth. Some still wanted war, others wanted negotiation. A few wanted to simply run, to abandon this region of space and let the humans have it. In the end, it was fear that won. On the 3rd day, the Galactic Council voted to accept humanity's terms. They would recognize Earth as a sovereign civilization. They would pay reparations for the murder of the diplomatic team. They would guarantee that no species would attack human territory. In exchange, humanity would not destroy any more stars. It was not a peace treaty, it was a surrender. And everyone knew it. The message was sent to Earth, where it was received with mixed emotions. Some cheered, others simply nodded, too tired to celebrate. Many wondered what would come next. The galaxy had not become friendly to humanity. It had simply become afraid of them. President Akono read the Council's response in her office alone. She did not smile, she did not celebrate. She simply closed her eyes and let out a long, slow breath. It is done. We have survived, but at what cost? That question would haunt her for the rest of her life. It would haunt all of humanity. They had proven they could not be conquered. They had also proven they could become monsters when pushed too far. The universe had changed. Humanity had changed it, and now everyone would have to live with the consequences. In the darkness of space, 3 human ships held position around the most important locations in the galaxy. They were small and fragile compared to the great fleets of the elder species, but they carried weapons that could end civilizations. And that made all the difference. Admiral Tanaka watched the Dravasi fleet from her command chair. They had not moved in 3 days. They would not move. They knew what would happen as they did. Hold position, she ordered, and keep watching. This is not over. This is just the beginning. She was right. A war was over, but the struggle was just starting. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Now it would have to figure out what kind of civilization it wanted to be. Would they be conquerors, peacemakers, monsters, saviors? That question hung over Earth like a second sun, and no one knew the answer yet. The signing ceremony took place at Nexus Station, in the same chamber where Alina Vasquez had died. It was not a celebration. It was not a moment of joy. It was simply the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. President Amara Akinquo walked into the council chamber with 12 guards at her side. She wore simple black clothes, the color of mourning. Her face showed no emotion as she approached the central platform where Alina had once stood with hope in her heart. The 11 remaining council members sat in their thrones, watching the human leader with a mixture of fear and respect. They had argued for days about how to address her. Some wanted to speak to her as an equal, others wanted to remind her of her species' youth and inexperience. In the end, they chose silence. There was nothing to say that would change what had happened. The Dravasi ambassador was the first to speak. Lord Vexer had been chosen for this duty. Though he had protested loudly, his scales had lost some of their brightness. Since the crisis began, he looked older, somehow as if the weight of events had aged him. President Okonkwo of Earth, he said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. The Galactic Council has agreed to your terms. We will recognize humanity as a sovereign civilization. We will pay the reparations you have demanded. We will guarantee that no member species will attack your territory. He paused, his burning eyes meeting hers. In exchange, you will not use your weapons against any council world unless attacked first. You will take your place among us, not as conquerors, but as neighbors. These are the terms. Do you accept? Akono nodded slowly. I accept, but I have something to say first. The council members shifted uneasily. They had not expected her to speak. The treaty was supposed to be simple, sign and leave. But the human president had other ideas. 30 days ago, Akono began, her voice calm but heavy. We sent our best and brightest to this station. They came with open hands and hopeful hearts. They believed that the galaxy would welcome them. They believed that your ancient civilizations would see the value in a young species with fresh ideas and boundless potential. She looked around the chamber, meeting each alien gaze in turn. You murdered them, you killed them like animals and laughed while you did it. You broadcast their deaths to 1,000 worlds as a lesson. You told the galaxy that humans were nothing, that we did not deserve to exist, that our dreams of the stars were childish fantasies that would end in blood. Her voice hardened. You were wrong, not about the blood. There has been more blood than anyone wanted, but you were wrong about everything else. We are not primitives. We are not animals. We are human beings, and we will never ever accept extinction without a fight. She pulled out a small photograph from her pocket. It showed Elena Vasquez and her team smiling and hopeful, taking the day before their mission began. These people did not deserve to die. They deserve to be heard. They deserve to be given a chance. Instead, you killed them and expected us to accept it. You expected us to cower in fear and wait for the inevitable end. She put the photograph away. I do not want your fear. I do not want your hatred. I do not even want your respect. I want you to understand something. We came to you in peace. We offered you friendship. You answered us with murder. Everything that has happened since then is a consequence of your choice, not ours. Yours. She looked at the empty Vorn throne. 4 billion Vaughn are dead because your high arbiter decided to kill our ambassadors. That weight rests on his memory, not on mine. I accept responsibility for that. But I did not start this war. You did. And I ended it in the only way that would guarantee my people's survival. The chamber was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Now we will sign this treaty. Akono continued, and we will take our place among you. But let me be clear about something. We will not be your servants. We will not be your slaves. We will not bow our heads and accept whatever treatment you choose to give us. We are equal members of this community now. Treat us as equals, and we will be the best neighbors you have ever had. Treat us as lesser beings, and you will learn exactly how terrible mistake that is. She stepped forward and signed the treaty with a simple electronic pen. Her name glowed on the document, binding humanity to the galactic community forever. It is done, she said. May we never have cause to use our weapons again. May our children grow up in a galaxy where peace is possible. And may you learn from this experience. As we have learned, the universe is vast and dangerous. We should be working together, not slaughtering each other. I hope someday you will understand that. She turned and walked out of the chamber. Without looking back, her guards followed in perfect formation. The council members watched her go, each lost in their own thoughts. When she was gone, the Cathmary representative spoke. "She is remarkable," she said quietly. "In all my centuries of life I have never met anyone like her. She carries the weight of billions of deaths on her shoulders, and she does not break. She looks at us, the rulers of the galaxy, and she is not afraid. She is simply tired." "She is dangerous," Lord Vexor said. "Yes." The Cathmary agreed, "But so are we. The difference is she knows it, and she is still willing to try for peace. That is either the greatest wisdom or the greatest foolishness I have ever seen. I am not sure which." The ceremony was over. Humanity had won, but the victory felt hollow to everyone who had lived through the past month. On Earth, the news was received with quiet relief. There were no parades, there were no celebrations. People simply went back to their lives, grateful that the war was over, but haunted by what had been done in their name. The photographs of the Von Sun exploding were everywhere. The faces of the 4 billion dead seemed to watch from every screen. Captain David Chen and his crew were eventually rescued by an Earth ship that found them drifting near the outer edge of the solar system. Their engines had failed completely, and they had been running out of air and food. Another day, and they would have died. Shen was welcomed back as a hero by some and a monster by others. He refused all interviews and declined all medals. He returned to his home city and took a job teaching literature to young children. When asked why, he said simply, "I have had enough of death. I want to spend the rest of my life surrounded by life." He never spoke publicly about what he had done. He never wrote a book or gave a speech. He simply lived quietly, teaching children to love words and stories, trying to remember what beauty felt like. After seeing so much destruction, Father Antonio returned to his church and spent his remaining years counseling people who struggled with guilt and grief. He never told anyone that he had been on the Prometheus. He never revealed his role in the death of a star. He simply listened and prayed and tried to help others find peace, even as he struggled to find his own. James Wright, the poet, published a single slim volume of poems about the experience. It was called The Day We Became Monsters. Most people did not understand it. Those who did found it impossible to forget. Admiral Tanaka retired from the military and moved to a small island in the Pacific Ocean. She spent her days fishing and watching the sunset. When reporters came to interview her, she sent them away. She had nothing to say that would make sense to people who had not stood at the edge of a star system with the power to kill billions. In her hands, President Okonkwo served 2 more years before stepping down. She returned to her home country of Ghana and bought a small house with a garden. She spent her final years growing vegetables and writing letters to the families of the diplomatic team. She apologized to each one personally. She told them that their loved ones had not died in vain. She was not sure if she believed that, but she said it anyway. She died at the age of 78, surrounded by her family. Her final words were reported differently by different sources. Some said she asked for forgiveness. Others said she simply smiled and closed her eyes. Only her daughter knew the truth, and she never told anyone the Prometheus arrays were placed in high-security lockdown after the treaty was signed. They remained armed and ready, a final defense against any species foolish enough to attack Earth, but they were never used again. Their existence was enough. Every civilization in the galaxy knew what would happen if they threatened humanity. None of them wanted to test it. Humanity expanded across the stars. In the centuries that followed, they built colonies on distant worlds. They created art and music that spread throughout the galaxy. They made discoveries that changed the way everyone understood the universe. They were never loved by the elder species, but they were respected and feared. Always feared. The Galactic Council eventually learned to work with humanity rather than against it. The Cathmari became their closest allies, fascinated by human creativity and resilience. The Dravasi kept their distance but traded peacefully. The Vaughn, reduced to a few 100 million survivors scattered across refugee worlds, never forgave humanity, but they never attacked either. They remembered what had happened to their star. They would never forget. In the great archives of Nexus Station, historians recorded the human arrival with an entry that would be read for millions of years. In the year 6,247,893 of the galactic calendar, a species called humanity made contact with the Council. They were young, primitive by our standards, with a history of violence and conflict. High Arbiter Zethal ordered their diplomatic team executed as a lesson to other young species. Humanity responded by destroying the Vaughn Sun. The lesson was learned, but not by humanity, by us. They came offering peace. We gave them war. They taught us the true meaning of both. They showed us that the universe does not belong to the oldest or the strongest or the wisest. It belongs to those who refuse to die, and no species in the history of the galaxy has ever refused more stubbornly than humanity. We call them dangerous. We call them unpredictable. We call them terrifying. They call themselves survivors. Perhaps they are right. 1,000 years after the treaty was signed, a Cathmari historian visited Earth to study humanity's home world. She walked through the streets of old cities and visited the museums that held artifacts from humanity's violent past. She read their literature and listened to their music. She spoke with their children and their elders. When she returned to Nexus Station, she was asked to give a presentation about what she had learned. The entire council attended, curious about the species that had changed their galaxy forever. She stood before them and spoke a single sentence: they are exactly like us. That is why they frighten us so much. No one argued with her, because deep down every species in the galaxy knew she was right. Humans were not aliens. They were mirrors. They showed the elder species what they had once been before. Millions of years of civilization had made them soft and certain of their power. Humans were what happened when a species never forgot how to fight, never forgot how to survive, never forgot that the universe was dark and cold and full of things that wanted to kill them. The elder species had forgotten those lessons. Humanity had reminded them, and the galaxy would never be the same. The stars burned on in the endless night as they always had and always would. But now when beings looked up at those stars, they thought of humanity. They thought of a small blue world that had refused to die. They thought of a species that had come in peace and learned to make war. They thought of the first star that died because someone underestimated the children of Earth, and they were afraid. Perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all. Do not poke the humans, they bite back.